The academy had practiced lockdown drills for invasions, riots, biological contamination, even false vacuum alerts. None of the protocols mentioned dragons. The first alarm screamed through the upper spires just as morning transit traffic peaked. Students froze mid-step. Teachers stopped mid-sentence. Security systems that hadn't activated in centuries slammed online all at once. Heat spike. Massive biological signature. Class 5 extinction organism detected. The automated announcement cut through the corridors, calm and utterly outmatched by the situation. Remain where you are. This is not a drill. High above the central concourse, Principal Threxel stood rigid before the panoramic observation pane. His 4 eyes tracked the data stream scrolling too fast to be reassuring. The signature was unmistakable, ancient, colossal, and catastrophically out of place. A dragon. Inside city limits. Inside his academy. Every interstellar law defined that as an act of war. Defense turrets unfolded from the walls. Drone wings whined to life. Shield emitters hummed as they strained to full output. The academy locked itself down so hard the surrounding district dimmed under the power draw. Students began to panic. Threxel did not blame them. He himself was calculating casualties. Then the main doors opened. Not blasted apart. Not melted. Not forced. They opened normally. A single human stepped inside. He was young by galactic standards. Tall, but not imposing. No armor. No visible weapons. His hands were empty, relaxed at his sides, as if he were walking into a classroom instead of the most heavily fortified educational institution in the sector. Behind him, the air moved. The dragon had to lower its head to clear the doorway. Scales like forged obsidian caught the emergency lights and scattered them into sharp reflections. Its wings folded in with deliberate care, membranes creasing like ancient parchment. Each step landed softly, absurdly softly, for something that could flatten cities by accident. A collective gasp rippled through the concourse. Security targeting systems locked on instantly. Threat warnings escalated from red to black. The dragon stopped. Not because of the weapons. Because the human stopped. He turned his head slightly, not even fully, and said something too quiet for the microphones to catch. The dragon lowered its head. Slowly. Carefully. Not in submission. In attention. Threxel felt something cold coil in his thorax. This was not dominance behavior. There were no neural shackles, no pheromonal overrides, no pain compliance responses. Every scan confirmed it. The dragon was not being controlled. It was listening. The human took another step forward. The dragon followed, keeping pace like a shadow that chose to exist. Security demanded the human freeze. He didn't. Not out of defiance. Out of trust. He kept walking, eyes forward, expression calm in a way that unsettled Threxel far more than fear would have. Fear was predictable. Panic was manageable. This was something else. A student fainted. Another dropped their datapad, the clatter echoing like a gunshot in the silence. The dragon's head lifted instantly, not toward the fallen student, but toward the human. A question. The human raised one hand, palm down. Easy, he said softly. The dragon exhaled. A slow, controlled release of heat that fogged the air without scorching it. It settled again, eyes never leaving the human. Only then did Threxel understand the real danger. If the dragon attacked, the academy would burn. If the human was harmed, the dragon would end the city. Threxel stepped forward to the intercom, every instinct screaming at him to order a retreat, a strike, something. Instead, he asked the only question that mattered. Human, he said, voice steady by sheer force of will. Why have you brought a dragon here? The human finally looked up. Not at the weapons. Not at the drones. At the principal. Because, the human said, simply, this is where I belong. The dragon took one more step forward and stopped at his side. Close enough that their shadows merged. The academy remained silent. And in that silence, the alien principal realized, with a clarity that terrified him, that violence had never been the point. Whatever this was, it had already begun. 4:11 full seconds after the human finished speaking, no one moved. Not the students frozen along the upper walkways. Not the teachers gripping emergency panels with shaking limbs. Not even the security drones, their weapon arrays humming softly as targeting algorithms struggled with an impossible contradiction. A dragon stood in the academy. And it was doing nothing. Principal Threxel felt the weight of that silence press harder than any alarm. Violence, at least, followed patterns. Rage could be predicted. Predators lunged. Weapons fired. But this? This was restraint. Human, Threxel said carefully, modulating his voice to the calm cadence used during hostage negotiations. You are in violation of 16 interstellar safety statutes. You will stop where you are. The human stopped. Immediately. The dragon halted with him, claws curling slightly against the polished floor, not digging in, not bracing. Waiting. Threxel's secondary eyes flicked to the data stream. Aggression levels, negligible. Stress markers, elevated, but focused. The dragon was alert, yes. But it was not hunting. Security officers began to fan out along the perimeter, weapons raised. A single miscalculation, one sudden movement, could cascade into annihilation. Threxel opened his mandibles to issue a stand-down order. Before he could speak, a student near the lower rail stumbled. A small one. Amphibious. Startled by the shifting drones, their slick feet lost traction. The child pitched forward with a startled cry. Every weapon in the room tracked the dragon. The dragon moved. Not forward. Sideways. One massive limb slid out with astonishing gentleness, blocking the fall. The student landed against scaled muscle instead of stone, unharmed, staring up in stunned silence. The dragon froze. Slowly, so slowly it felt deliberate, it turned its head toward the human. Its eyes were ancient suns, molten and unreadable, until the human met its gaze. He nodded once. The dragon withdrew its limb and leaned back, lowering its body to reduce its silhouette. Non-threatening posture. De-escalation. Threxel felt something inside him fracture. That exchange had not been command. It had been permission. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Scanners updated again and again, as if the system itself refused to believe the readings. No dominance markers. No ownership signals. No suppression fields. By every known metric, the dragon was free. Why does it obey you? A senior security officer demanded, voice trembling despite training. The human glanced back, brow furrowing slightly. He doesn't, he said. That answer landed harder than any roar. The dragon shifted closer to the human, body angling subtly so that its bulk lay between him and the armed guards. Not aggressively. Protectively. Its wings remained folded, but its attention sharpened. The message was unmistakable. I am watching how you treat him. Threxel swallowed. Across the academy, fear was transforming. Students leaned forward instead of back. Teachers lowered their weapons a fraction, curiosity warring with instinct. The dragon's stillness was doing something no lecture ever had. It was forcing everyone to confront their assumptions. Dragons were supposed to dominate or destroy. Humans were supposed to compensate with tools and tricks. Instead, here stood a human with nothing in his hands, and a dragon choosing peace at his side. Explain, Threxel said quietly. The human exhaled, tension finally visible in the subtle set of his shoulders. We met when he was hurt, he said. Badly. Everyone else saw a threat. I saw someone in pain. The dragon's tail shifted, curling loosely behind the human like a living wall. He could have killed me, the human continued. Didn't. I could have run. Didn't. After that, we just kept choosing the same thing. Threxel replayed the footage of the student's near fall. The dragon's immediate reaction. The glance. The wait. Choice. A concept many species claim to value, yet rarely extended to creatures they labeled monsters. Security finally lowered their weapons. Not because they were ordered to. Because aiming them suddenly felt wrong. Threxel keyed a silent command, retracting the outer defense grid. The hum of the shield softened. The academy breathed again. The dragon noticed instantly. Its posture relaxed a fraction. Approval, or at least acknowledgement. Threxel straightened, understanding dawning with uncomfortable clarity. This was not a human controlling a dragon. This was a dragon choosing to trust a human, and daring the rest of the galaxy to prove that trust misplaced. Very well, Threxel said at last. You may proceed. But understand this, human, if anything goes wrong. The dragon's head lifted, eyes locking on the principal. Not threatening. Final. Threxel amended his statement. The responsibility will be shared, he finished. The human smiled faintly. That's all I ever wanted. Together, they took a step forward. And the academy, against all reason, made room. The academy did not return to normal. It relearned how to breathe. Corridors that once echoed with hurried steps now held a cautious quiet, the kind that followed a natural disaster, when structures still stood, but everyone knew the ground beneath them had shifted. Classes resumed on paper, schedules reactivated, announcements resumed in measured tones. Yet every eye tracked the same thing. The human walked through the halls. The dragon followed. Not looming. Not posturing. Its wings stayed folded tight, its head lowered just enough to fit beneath archways designed for species far smaller than it. Each step was measured, almost apologetic, as if it were a guest afraid of breaking furniture. Students pressed against walls to let them pass. Not because they were ordered to. Because instinct demanded distance. Principal Threxel observed from the upper balcony as the pair crossed the central atrium. His aides whispered urgently, requests to isolate the human, to separate the dragon, to call the council, to activate emergency authority. Threxel silenced them with a gesture. He needed to see this himself. He descended the stairs and stepped into the open space, his escort halting behind him. The moment his presence registered, the dragon's head lifted. Not in challenge. In assessment. Threxel felt the weight of that gaze like gravity. He was being evaluated, not as an official, not as a commander, but as a person. The human noticed and stopped at once. "That's far enough," he said to the dragon. The dragon obeyed instantly, lowering its head again and settling its weight back onto its haunches. Stone floors groaned softly beneath the mass. Threxel raised one limb, signaling his guards to remain back. "Human," he said, stepping forward alone. "You place yourself between this academy and a creature capable of mass extinction. You ask us to accept this without explanation." The human met his eyes. No defiance. No submission. Just honesty. "You asked why I brought him here," the human said. "This is the answer." He gestured around them, to the students peering from doorways, to the teachers frozen in uncertainty, to the very walls humming with restrained force. "This place teaches the future," he continued. "What it teaches them matters." Threxel frowned. "You believe this display is instruction?" The human shook his head. "It's not a display." He rested one hand against the dragon's foreleg. The contact was casual. Familiar. "I'm enrolled here," the human said. "So is he." A murmur swept the atrium. Threxel stared. "That is not possible. Dragons are not weapons," the human finished quietly. "So are humans. That didn't stop you from admitting us." The dragon shifted slightly, adjusting its position to give the human more space, its tail curling protectively around the far side of his body. Not shielding him from Threxel, but from the watching crowd. The message was clear. He is under my care. Threxel felt centuries of policy grind against a single, fragile moment. "You ask us to rewrite doctrine," he said slowly. "No," the human replied. "I'm asking you to look at what's already here." Threxel glanced at the dragon again. At the lack of chains. The lack of aggression. At the way its breathing synchronized unconsciously with the humans. "You could command it," Threxel said. "Force obedience. Claim authority." The human's expression hardened, not in anger, but in resolve. "If I ever tried," he said, "he'd leave." The dragon's eyes flicked to him. Agreement. Silence stretched again, this time not from fear, but from something dangerously close to understanding. Threxel spoke the question that had been forming since the doors first opened. "What are you to each other?" The human answered without hesitation. "Friends." The word echoed strangely in the vast space. Not ally. Not handler. Not master. Friend. The dragon lowered its head until its brow rested lightly against the human's shoulder. A gesture so intimate it made several faculty members avert their eyes. Threxel felt the weight of history tilt. Friendship, by galactic definition, was inefficient. Risky. Unverifiable. Yet here it stood, scaled and human, fragile and catastrophic, balanced on mutual trust. Threxel straightened, making his decision. "Then understand this," he said. "Friendship carries responsibility." The human nodded. "I know." Threxel turned, addressing the academy at large. "Classes will continue," he announced. "No restrictions will be placed on the human or the dragon, unless either gives cause." A collective exhale rippled through the space. The dragon's posture eased further. Threxel met the human's gaze one last time. "Welcome," he said carefully, "to the academy." As the human and the dragon resumed walking, side by side, equal in pace, Threxel realized the question that had truly changed everything was not the one he had asked. It was the one the academy would now have to answer. What does it mean to learn, when fear is no longer the lesson? By the third day, the academy stopped flinching. Not completely. Instinct did not vanish that easily. But the constant edge of panic dulled into something quieter: watchfulness, curiosity, the kind of caution that comes from learning rather than terror. The dragon waited outside classrooms. That alone unsettled faculty more than its presence in the halls ever had. It did not demand space. It asked for it, folding itself carefully into courtyards and alcoves, wings tucked tight, tail curled so precisely that maintenance drones recalculated paths around it instead of rerouting students. When bells chimed, the dragon lifted its head, listening, as if respecting the rhythm of the place. When the human disappeared into lectures, the dragon stayed. Always. Students noticed patterns. It never crossed thresholds uninvited. It never raised its head higher than necessary. It never watched the crowd unless the human was delayed. And when the human emerged, even minutes late, the dragon's posture shifted instantly, tension melting away. Fear began to fracture into fascination. A group of juvenile scholars from a lithoid species were the first to approach. They did so under supervision, instructors prepared to trigger shields at the slightest provocation. The dragon did not move. It lowered its head. One of the students extended a crystalline hand, trembling violently. The dragon waited. The human, watching from a distance, gave a small nod. The student touched the dragon's scales, and laughed in shock as warmth pulsed gently through the crystal lattice. Word spread. Not of danger. Of gentleness. Lessons changed without syllabi ever being updated. In xenopsychology, case studies on aggression were quietly supplemented with real-time observation of restraint. In ethics seminars, debates over dominance hierarchies stalled as students pointed out a living counterexample lounging in the quad. Principal Threxel found himself fielding reports he had no category for. Dragon intervened to prevent bullying. Dragon assisted in search and rescue drill, without prompting. Dragon refused food until human returned. The last report disturbed him more than the others. He summoned the human to his office. "Your companion exhibits pack-bond behavior," Threxel said, reviewing footage. "Extreme levels. This degree of attachment is dangerous." The human did not argue. "It goes both ways," he said quietly. Threxel studied him. "You would place yourself at risk for it?" The human met his gaze. "Every day." Threxel dismissed him with a gesture, unsettled. Across the academy, something profound was unfolding. Students stopped whispering dragon, and started using its name. Not out of bravado. Out of respect. They learned to ask before approaching. To read posture. To understand that power did not excuse carelessness, it demanded it. The dragon, in turn, learned pathways, schedules, safe distances. It adjusted itself constantly to fit a world not built for it. Mutual adaptation. One afternoon, a fire alarm sounded during a laboratory malfunction. Sprinklers failed. Smoke filled the west wing. Panic surged as evacuation protocols collided. The dragon moved first. Not toward the fire. Toward the exits. It herded students with its body, blocking smoke-filled corridors and opening clear paths with a single, controlled sweep of its wings. When the human sprinted in the opposite direction, toward the danger, the dragon hesitated for less than a second. Then it followed. They emerged together minutes later, soot-streaked but unharmed. The academy watched in silence. No cheers. No applause. Just understanding. That night, Principal Threxel updated the academy's charter with a single line, added without ceremony. "Sentience is not measured by form, but by choice." The dragon lay in the courtyard under artificial starlight, students scattered at a respectful distance, studying beside it as if this were the most natural thing in the universe. The human sat against its foreleg, datapad balanced on his knees. The academy had not just learned to tolerate the dragon. It had learned something far more dangerous. That fear was not the beginning of wisdom. And that friendship, real friendship, was a force capable of reshaping institutions older than empires. The report took 3 weeks to write. Principal Threxel rewrote it 17 times and deleted it 12. Every official template failed him. Risk assessments could not quantify trust. Behavioral models collapsed when faced with a dragon that chose patience over dominance and a human who refused authority over something that could annihilate him. In the end, Threxel abandoned formality. He wrote the truth. By the time the Academy Council convened, the dragon had become expected. It rested in the central courtyard each morning, sunlight warming obsidian scales that students now passed without panic. Some still hurried. Some lingered. None screamed anymore. The human walked beside it, still unarmed, still calm. The council chamber filled with representatives from a dozen species, their expressions ranging from outrage to fascination. Security presence tripled. Emergency evacuation plans sat preloaded, fingers metaphorically hovering over execution commands. Threxel stood alone at the center dais. "You allowed a dragon into an educational institution," one counselor hissed. "This violates every interstellar safety precedent." Threxel did not argue. "Yes," he said. Murmurs rippled. "Then justify it." Threxel activated the holodisplay, not with threat projections or combat simulations, but with footage. A dragon stopping a falling student. A dragon waiting outside lecture halls. A dragon redirecting evacuees through smoke. A dragon refusing food until its human returned. "These are not anomalies," Threxel said evenly. "They are patterns." "A weapon can be trained to mimic restraint," another counselor snapped. Threxel changed the feed. The dragon sleeping, head lowered, vulnerable. The human sitting watch through the night. The dragon stirring at the human's cough, not at distant noise. "This," Threxel said, "is not training." Silence followed. At last, a counselor asked the question Threxel had dreaded. "What happens when the human is gone?" Threxel met their gaze without flinching. "Then we will learn whether the lessons remain," he said. "And that is a risk worth taking." The council recessed without a vote. They did not revoke Threxel's authority. They did not approve his decision. They left, uncertain, unsettled, changed. That evening, Threxel stood once more at the observation window. Below, the human prepared to leave for the day. The dragon rose immediately, aligning its pace with his, careful not to crowd him, careful not to frighten those nearby. At the gates, the human paused. He rested his hand briefly against the dragon's scales, gratitude, not command. The dragon responded by lowering its head so their shadows merged one last time. Threxel recorded his final note for the Academy archives, his voice low and unguarded. "Today, I witnessed the most dangerous bond in the galaxy. Not because it threatens destruction, but because it proves something we have spent millennia denying." He stopped the recording, then resumed. "Power does not create loyalty. Fear does not create peace. Control does not create safety." The human and the dragon walked out together, disappearing into the city beyond. Threxel finished the entry. "Humanity is not feared because it commands monsters. Humanity is feared because monsters choose to stand beside it. And in doing so, they teach us what friendship truly costs, and what it is worth." The archive sealed. The Academy remained. And across the stars, quietly, the definition of danger began to change.